Gary, you don't know what an honor it is for us to have you on. This is Inside the Locker Room in Tuscaloosa. I'm Barry, my dad, Wimp Sanderson, who was a basketball coach at Alabama. We're a bunch of basketball guys that think we know football, but we really appreciate you taking the time to be on with us this morning.
Both of you know how ironic. I just did the Kentucky game where most of their fans are the basketball fans watching, and they weren't too happy with the football game. So my pleasure to be on.
Well, I wanted to ask you this. This is Wimp. Barry has already introduced us. Both football teams, will they be similar in defensive schemes? The reason I ask this question, even though the quarterbacks are pretty similar except time in school, defensive backs have been depleted a little bit for Ole Miss. Will their schemes be sort of the same?
I guess to the lay person as you watch it, it will seem so. I think the Ole Miss defensive front, it takes way more chances. They really want to create havoc at the line of scrimmage. They move a little bit more than the Alabama defensive line. But I do think, Coach, you've zeroed in onto what the key of the game is. There's probably two factors in this football game. One is there's a lot of strength to both of these teams, but the weakness of both of these teams is their offensive line. So both of the defensive front sevens will try to win the game up front, and they will try to produce those tackle for losses, negative plays, pressuring the quarterback, sacks, all of the things that will force the back end of the defense with the big receivers that Ole Miss has and the tremendous talent for Alabama's receivers to be less able to get the football. I mean, you did it as a coach. I mean, when you have a big post guy that can score, you try to pressure the point guard so it's not easy to get him the ball. You just don't defend the guy once he gets the ball. You defend it before he gets the ball. And the same thing will be happening in this game. I had a coach in high school that always said, I can coach most. Bill McCartney was my football coach in high school. He was also the basketball coach. And he said, if you can coach anything. Yeah. And I think that all games are much more similar than people realize.
Okay, we're talking with Gary Danielson. Gary, I want to ask you, I think Ole Miss has one advantage, and I think it's between the ears. Many teams hope they can beat Alabama, but don't really believe it. I think this Ole Miss football team believes they can because they've done it, and there's a difference. Just talk to the listeners about that.
I think it's even a little bit more than that. I would agree with I think that's part of what gives Ole Miss a chance in this game. The other part of it is since they've beat Alabama, for the last year, they beat them 2 years in a row. And since they've beat them 2 years in a row, they watch Alabama go to the playoffs 2 straight years. Last year after they beat them, it took a 4th and 25 for Ole Miss not to be in the SEC championship. It could have been them in the playoffs and possibly winning the championship. So now, not only has that happened, they've had to listen to Alabama say, yeah, they didn't beat us. We beat ourselves. It wasn't you guys. It was us. So now they get them back at home again. And you're right. They believe they can beat Alabama, but they've also heard the fact that it wasn't us. It wasn't Ole Miss that beat them. It was Alabama who beat themselves. Now, that may be true. But if you're an Ole Miss player, that has to grind on you. So you're going to be doubly motivated for this football game. And as your original point is, they do not only think they can beat them, they know they can beat them. They've done it. And they also, I think, the other, main factor of this football game is quarterback. Jalen Hurts is a tremendous athlete, good quarterback. He's been, coached really well. He's got great weapons around him, and he seems unflappable. But he hasn't played an SEC road game yet. And Chad Kelly is a veteran home quarterback. We will see. So we'll have to point out, though, the one advantage that Alabama has in this game. I mean, they are supremely talented. We all know that. But I was shocked when you actually looked at this. Hugh Freeze has coached against Alabama in 4 games. They have never rushed for over 100 yards.
Wow.
80, 46, 76, and 92. In the last 2 wins, they've had 64 runs and averaged 2.6 yards per attempt. I think if that happens again, it won't be enough help for Chad Kelly to win the game. Now, we'll get back to the other one. Barring a bunch of turnovers, that always upsets any football game.
Yeah,
I also want to ask you, I know Dad's another question, but, Hugh Freeze has come out and said he thinks it is an advantage to play Alabama early because usually they don't have a lot of guys hurt. Alabama's offense is not gelled probably because it's breaking in a new quarterback. Is that kind of thrown out the window now with Ole Miss having those injuries?
I think it's a great point, and I'm going to steal it from you for the broadcast. I hadn't even thought about it. I just reviewed last year's game, and it was amazing to me watching the game that Derrick Henry didn't, and their offensive line didn't look like the team we saw 8 games into the season. Calvin Ridley wasn't the go-to guy that he became in games 7, 8, 9, 10 as he was early. Jake Coker wasn't the three of the main parts, the cogs of the Alabama championship weren't even in this football game. I know Henry was, but it just didn't seem the same type of attack when they created the pressure point with Derrick Henry and then they moved out. They created the pressure point with Calvin Ridley and balanced those two, and Jake Coker became the guy that was dynamic for them as a leader. It all happened after. So I think it's a tremendous point.
Well, one last question. I know you've got to go. Can Alabama go where they want to go with the running game that they have right now? 8 in the box, of course, for Western Kentucky. I didn't think Southern Cal was very good to start with. We don't know about their running game. Can you assess their running game a little bit for us and what they have to do to get themselves where they want to get with the running game?
The game is changing so much, and that's one of the great things about Coach Saban, that he doesn't get enough credit. He's not a hard-headed coach. He's tweaked his defensive philosophy to match up with the new rules. He's tweaked his offensive philosophy to take advantage of the rules in college. I still think he's not comfortable. We could tell in the press conference that they're not controlling the line of scrimmage and the clock and the running game yet exactly the way he wants it. So I would have to say, considering most of their tough games are on the road this year, I don't think they are where they need to be in controlling the game, the clock, and the running game yet to be a championship team. But, everybody talks about the rest of the conference as they get better as the season wears along. The team that improves the most every year, Nick Saban's team. Yeah. They get better as the season goes along. Everybody acts like he just rolls the ball out with a bunch of 5-star players and they dominate with talent. They don't just dominate with talent. They improve as the year goes along.
They do. And we appreciate you being on so much. I tell you, I listen to you every opportunity I can because you're the absolute best analyst that I have ever seen on television. Wow. I'm not a big football guy, but I like to listen to what you say.
I appreciate it. Thank you much, Wimp. Barry, it was a pleasure being on the show.